this morning or afternoon, depending on which time zone you're in. My name is Nicole Crane with the Iowa Association of Business and Industry. This is our first in a series of manufacturing insights as the organization, as we travel around the state and we talk to members and other business leaders, we ask them, how can we better serve you? One thing we hear is you all are all busy. There's so much information coming at you, and sometimes it's too much to travel 4 hours to one meeting or 3 hours to another. And so we are bringing the expertise and information to you in your office or wherever you are. So I just want to say thank you for taking time and joining us. We hope to have some opportunity for some great questions. We have great speakers to kick off our series. I'm going to go ahead too, before I introduce our speakers and economic leadership, I'm going to talk about a little bit about our upcoming events. So you can see those on the slide. We are also going to be doing our regional policy meetings virtually this year. This is something new that we've done, but we'll be featuring legislators. So for those of you who have participated in our policy process in the past, you know that we typically go around the state, we get feedback from you, and we also talk about what happened during the legislative session. Given the time in the legislative session and our upcoming policy committee meetings, we wanted to make sure that we got to you in time, and also that we shared with you some thoughts of key legislators that support business issues, what they're thinking about for 2026, and so that ABI can have policy positions that reflect that as we're going into the next legislative session. As many of you know, I know some of you on here are involved in ABI, so I apologize for the repetitiveness. Some of you are new to the organization, but we also have a foundation, and our foundation puts on great programs, a whole continuum of programs for our future workforce. So Business Horizons is going on this week. It's for high school students. We have Leadership Iowa University coming up in August, as well as our Leadership Iowa kicks off in the fall. We also are starting an Elevate Iowa Manufacturing RV Tour in October. We'll be around the state traveling to visit manufacturing facilities and talk about the cool careers and opportunities that there are in manufacturing in Iowa. So a little bit going on. I don't want to take all the time, so I just want to say thank you to our guests. Here's a couple of slides about our programs so you can see more. Also, feel free to reach out to Meg or Levi on that. Levi, if you want to go ahead and go to don't want to forget this slide. For those of you who are manufacturers, we do have our programming. As you all know, there's ways as a member benefit that you can take advantage of these, get discounts. One specific to manufacturers is our program with Crystal Clean. And so I just wanted to highlight that if you're not aware of it, check out our website. You can find out more information. As you can tell, I'm really excited about getting to the meat of the issue of our topic today. And so as we talk about our future manufacturing insights webinars and we talk about the program today, today's program really came about as I was talking to our other peers in other states about what is going on with trade, what is going on with foreign investment, what does that mean to our regional economy? So the Iowa Association of Business and Industry partnered with, there's 13 states total. And as part of that, we got some individualized information about trade data in Iowa. I am not an economist. I don't pretend to be one, but I think what is so great about ABI and the relationships that we have with our manufacturing peers and our chamber peers across the country is that when we all get together, we're able to get wonderful experts and companies such as Economic Leadership, Ted Abernathy and Skylar Casey to come together, put together these reports for us, and to share all of this thought leadership and information with you. So a little bit about Economic Leadership is they are an economic development and strategic planning consultancy, and they have helped. I've had the opportunity to meet Ted a couple of different times. Excited to see him. I was joking. He was telling us about one of his recent trips. I said, and you get to go to Kansas City in a few weeks. So had the opportunity to hear from Ted when he was in Cedar Rapids working on a couple of projects there, and as well as at some of our national organizations that we have annual conferences with. But their company, they help clients in a lot of different ways. So they've worked with state and local governments, public and private companies, economic development organizations, nonprofits, and more. So they've provided strategic planning, analysis, and counsel to hundreds of clients, bolstered by decades of experience in state and local economic development, real estate, planning, organizational management, public affairs, and analytics. So as you can tell, they have a breadth of knowledge. Ted serves as a managing partner, and I'm going to Ted, you're going to have to say the name of the city. Is it Charlotte? Charlotte?
It's Charlotte.
Okay. See,
Good,
I should
good
know
Southern
that,
North
but
Carolina name, but
I
it's
should have
spelled like
asked that
shallot.
before
But
we in our intro before. Um, And like I said, he works with companies, foundations, and business organizations. And he's the principal author of close to 125 reports on future trends, economic and workforce development, technology, and leadership. And he speaks on the business, on the economy to business groups almost every week. He has us today, and he was talking about a board retreat tomorrow in North Carolina. So he's very busy. So we're grateful to have a little bit of his time this morning. Skylar has been working with economic leadership since 2014, specializing in data collection and analysis, stakeholder interviews, and economic impact analysis. The research has included the state tech sector evaluations, workplace safety reports, supply chain analysis, sustainability reviews, regional cluster assessments, and workforce strategic plans. So you can tell why I'm really excited to have them with us today to share what they've found in the study that they've conducted for us and the reports that they've done. And so with that, I promise I'm going to stop talking. We're going to record this webinar, and we'll have opportunities for questions at the end, but Ted and Skylar, take it away.
Thank you, Nicole. I also get really excited about manufacturing. All four of my grandparents were first generation manufacturing workers. They came off the farm to work in textiles in North Carolina. My dad worked for a module home building company in the second half of his life. And so manufacturing has always been part of my DNA and helped get me through college. So I think a lot of it. When we go ahead and go to the next one, Skylar. I think Nicole covered us pretty well, but we are working right now in 28 different states. We work for R's and D's, and we try to focus on what we say are no blues, no red, just green. We focus on business and try to work on information for those businesses. Next. And we do work a lot for state chambers. Half our clients are private businesses, and we do a lot of work for foundations, but we've been lucky enough to work across the country for chambers. And we believe, so we're business people. We try to look at things that help businesses as we go forward. Next. So for this project, as Nicole said, we looked at trade and foreign direct investment, and it is a topical area, but you won't hear me do much politics today. We try to stay away from that. So if there's some Q&A at the end, I'll try to answer any questions. But this is just about benchmarking how you're doing. Next. So it is a 13 county region. The Midwest, we can have a good debate and probably win some money betting on what states are counted in the Midwest. But for this one, this is what's located there. We looked at manufacturing and how it fits into the economy, the role of trade and how that impacts manufacturing specifically in the group. And then we also looked at foreign direct investment. It's a key piece of the manufacturing sector in the U.S. And is one that is in evolution right now. Next. So the role of the manufacturing in the economy, next, is terribly important. When you start looking at just total jobs in the Midwest, 12% of total employment is in manufacturing. Manufacturing is what's known as a base industry or a traded industry. About a third of the jobs are in those industries, and they bring money from outside into your area. That money is then traded around to the other 2/3, to the eating establishments and the beauty shops and the doctor's office and the school teachers. So when you think of it as 12%, that's a huge part of what drives your economy. You can see at the top, it's government and healthcare, but go ahead, that's fine, Sarah, Skylar. When you think about go to the next one. When you think about what the impact overall is, one of the things that's different about the Midwest and something that is special about it is that manufacturing drives your economy. If you're looking at some states, and we do work in Arizona or Florida or New York, manufacturing is a small part of what drives their economy, but your concentration is 1.5 times the national average. That's what this means. For every sort of average job in the country, you've got an extra half job. And so it's a high concentration. It is the lead driver of your economy. Next. And the GDP, as you can see, far outweighs everything else. It's 15% of the total GDP of the whole part of this country. Government's in there, but finance and insurance about half of manufacturing. So the health of your manufacturing industry is the health of the Midwest. Next. Wages are high. There are other parts of the economy, smaller parts that have higher overall earnings. That's wages and benefits. But close to 100,000 is the norm across the whole region. And that's $419 billion of earnings that then ripple through your economy. Next. When you start taking it apart, and Skylar's going to go through all sorts of taking it apart in a few minutes, but vehicle parts are near the top, around 340,000 of your jobs. Plastics are imported. Animals and food production for us, the vehicles themselves, machine shops, and it goes on down. But you're very diverse, and there's no discounting how much motor vehicles matter to the region. When we index it back to just before the Great Recession, it was a hard time for everybody in manufacturing just after 2007. So you had drops in real GDP and drops in employment. Since then, everybody's been digging back out. Growth has happened again, which is great. I think there were a lot of naysayers back in 2008 and 9 who were saying manufacturing was dead in America. Never was dead. Now well above those levels for GDP and for the number of manufacturers, employment has leveled off just under that number in 2007. And if we'd have taken this slide back before that, we know manufacturing has been dropping for the 2 decades before that. But the world changed pretty dramatically in 2007 as the financial crisis hit. Next. Manufacturing, going all the way back to 2005, has continued to grow. It's always been a misnomer of people who don't understand the industry that manufacturing was dead or dying or declining. Manufacturing's been growing. The output overall in the country is over 3 trillion now, and so it has been a consistent growth industry. And I think next slide. When you hear about it, part of the reason was that initial drop between 2000 and the recession in 2010 of the number of workers, then a rebound, but based on just before COVID, the numbers have been pretty flat. And so there's been a lot of discussion about manufacturing. It is a topic of great discussion in the country, but overall manufacturing jobs have stayed level. Next. The expectation is that's going to change. But with the Infrastructure Investment Act, the CHIPS Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, the federal government changed its model. For the last 50 years, we've not promoted an industrial policy in America. We've suggested that the market should do that and the government should stay out of it. And I even served on a White House team in the mid 20 teens to go to China and try to convince them they shouldn't do it. But we didn't work. We saw the Chinese government and a lot of other governments around the world were investing in specific industries, and it was felt that America was falling behind in some of those industries. So starting in 2020, we began to invest heavily, and construction spending on new facilities and new lines has really gone up. It's tripled, and so a lot of those construction projects aren't operational yet. They don't have the number of people working in them yet, or they don't have as many robots working in them either. And so what we expect over the next few years is a big change. The real challenge for everybody is that we can't fill the jobs we have now. The last numbers I saw was nearer 400,000 vacant manufacturing jobs. Some of them are shift work. Some of them have other issues. We don't have workers where they need to be. And so the challenge to grow the manufacturing sector is going to be predominantly not around the financing of it or the markets of it, but can we find enough manpower or automation power to generate what we need to generate in manufacturing. Next. Uh, I know the scare in the Midwest has been that you've been hemorrhaging jobs to the South. Everybody has. Southern states, and in this case, Southern states include Texas. They're not always sure they're in the South, but at least for this slide, they are. And so lots of growth in Tennessee, Kentucky, North and South Carolina, Georgia, and Texas as far as new manufacturing jobs go. This is just movement of all firms, by the way. This isn't just manufacturers. So a movement south, and that movement has been for cost and taxes and incentives, and there's a bunch of reasons. But the connection has more recently been around that's where people moved. And where you could find labor is where companies started going. We do site location analysis for companies, and finding enough people that have the skills they need is usually the number one issue for them. It's not price, it's people. Next. But I think changing in manufacturing is something that we try to encourage all states to look at, because while the average manufacturer job doesn't really exist. There's jobs in all areas, and so what you've seen in the last 5 years is big growth in wood products and chemical manufacturing and food processing, but some losses in some traditional things like transportation equipment, machinery manufacturing, fabricated metals. And so this is a watchword for everyone to keep their finger on the pulse of their individual manufacturers and their individual manufacturing sectors, because while you might have a net one somewhere, that net one might include 50 pluses and 50 minuses. And that's where the real public policy issues come into play. Next. So the plan here is to look overall at the role of trade in Midwest manufacturing. And Skylar, I think you're going to take it from here, correct? You get off mute and I get on mute. That'll help.
Okay, there we go. Yes, so sorry, I tried to unmute and it skipped a slide, but I'm going to talk about how we dove into the trade data, and I'll start a little bit. Ted gave the overview of the Midwest sector. I'll give a little overview here of Iowa's manufacturing sector. About 250,000 jobs in manufacturing in 2024. That was 14% of all jobs in Iowa, and it was about 5% of all manufacturing jobs in the Midwest. And when you look at GDP, it's about 42 billion in 2024, and that was 17% of Iowa's total GDP. So a big chunk of the economy there. And when you drill down, Iowa's manufacturing economy is a little bit different than several of the other Midwest states. And I'll be going kind of back and forth between the regional trends in Iowa here. And you will notice some differences in between Iowa's manufacturing sector. The top industries are food products. That's your poultry processing, your animal slaughtering facilities. And those are really growing, as you saw, all over the Midwest and in Iowa. And then Iowa has a strong contingency of machinery production, primarily in ag and construction machinery. And that's also been growing in the state the last 5 years. And then also a big component of transportation and electronic products and metals that make up the industry. But those have seen some job losses in the state the last 5 years. Oh, sorry, it's not advancing at a good time. But so in this report, we just wanted to kind of set the baseline. We used 2024 and we went back a few years as well to kind of look at trends in trade in the Midwest and in Iowa. And so we're just kind of benchmarking like the role trade is playing in the manufacturing sector here. And when you look, you can drill down in the census data by state and by industry and exports and imports. So we got really deep into the data and tried to dig out some trends in this report. And one of the things we noticed is the Midwest has traditionally been a big part of the U.S. exports. It accounted for about a fourth kind of pre-Great Recession. And that number's really oscillated in recent years. We kind of do see this kind of overall decline in the share of manufacturing. And that could be just a decline in production, but also kind of that movement to the South and the West might also be playing a role there. And when we look at Iowa specifically, Iowa's real value of exports is higher than its real value of imports. So Iowa has a trade surplus, which is only a few of the states we looked at had that. Most of the Midwest is importing more than they export. So Iowa's pretty unique in that. And that's been consistent over many years. And then we looked at where the exports from the Midwest were going. And when you look at the regions, North America is a big portion of that. Asia, about less than half of the North American value, same with Europe. And then the other regions, the trade levels are pretty small. And when we do the same analysis by country for Iowa, the top destination for Iowa exports are Canada, Mexico, and those are the biggest chunks, and then smaller portions going to Japan, China, and Brazil. In the Midwest, the highest value of exports are in pharmaceuticals, aerospace, and then motor vehicles in both the vehicles themselves and in parts. And those are, those have much more value than some of the other parts, but you'll see the machinery, agriculture machinery, and a lot of chemicals and electrical components make up the majority of exports in the region. And you see the high value add industries obviously have higher values of exports there. And when we look at this for Iowa, kind of the top 5 in the state, you see the highest level of export value is in those agriculture and machinery productions, but also those meat products, which is a high employer in the state. And then you see chemicals and fertilizer and grain seed. So a lot of food products and a lot of kind of everything related to ag. So you have a big agricultural production state, and you see that reflected in the manufacturing sector. And those are the types of products that are driving exports. And because we could get good data on sales and exports specific to the manufacturing industry, you'll see we did some baseline research and we saw a lot of just kind of total exports impact on an economy, but we really wanted to drill down specifically to manufacturing exports and their impact on the economy. So you have some other exports, but we're looking specifically at ones from manufacturing companies. And when you do that for the Midwest, in 2024, there was $390 billion in exports from these companies. And that was about 16% of all sales in the Midwest for manufacturing companies. And you can use, we have these productivity ratios of sales per worker. And when you do that for every industry, for every export, you can drill down and get some sense of the jobs that are reliant on these exports. And when we did that for the Midwest, the total jobs directly supported by exports were about 50,000 jobs. And that was 17% of the total manufacturing employment in the Midwest. So pretty sizable chunk, and that's just directly supported. One of the things we did in the report is we wanted to kind of see the ripple effects of that throughout the economy. We know that when you add a job in manufacturing, as Ted mentioned earlier, it's a base industry. It supports so many other jobs across an economy. It does that through supply chain. You bring a manufacturer in, other supply chains tend to co-locate, but then you also are supporting all the other industries, your healthcare, your teachers, your retail, all through the economy. And when we do this, there's these complex input-output models that try to quantify that impact. And when we look at those values, those multiplier values for the Midwest, manufacturing has one of the highest kind of multiplying effects. So this gives us some sense of, what supporting a manufacturing job in the economy does. So on average, we found that, supporting or creating one job in manufacturing is, indirectly supporting three other jobs across the economy, or 3.27, with a total of 4.27. So a big impact manufacturing has on other parts of the economy. And so when you take that number from the Midwest, that 750,000 jobs, that was about 2% of the total Midwest economy. And then when you add that multiplier effect, that's a whole another 6% of the economy that are supported just from exports in the manufacturing industry. And so that, when you combine those direct and indirect jobs, that's 8% of the total workforce in the Midwest. And we did the same analysis for Iowa. Iowa has a specific kind of two-pager that Nicole, I'm sure, will be giving details about here. But we did the same kind of methodology for Iowa. Iowa had about 14 billion in exports from the manufacturing industry in the state. That was about 11% of all sales from manufacturing industry. And when you look at kind of productivity ratios and stuff like that, we were able to find that about 25,000 jobs are directly supported by these manufacturing exports. And that's about 11% of the state's manufacturing industry. And that same number is about 2% of the total Iowa workforce. And when you add in kind of that indirect ripple effect, that's another 2% of the state economy, for about 4% of the state economy. And, as Ted said, that manufacturing piece really matters to the rest of the state. Then we looked at import trends. In the Midwest, the value of imports have gone up over time, even when you account for inflation of prices of goods. And they've risen in the Midwest a little bit more than the United States over that same time. As such, as imports have grown, the trade balance of the Midwest has continued to increase. So more imports than exports for most of the Midwest. Not true in Iowa, as we discussed, but the general regional trend is that most of the imports come from other countries in North America. Asia accounts for a lot of the imports into the Midwest, and Europe. And when we kind of compare that to the real value of exports, we see a trade surplus with the Africa, Australia, and Central and South America regions, but we have some large trade deficits with our other trading partners in Asia, North America, and Europe. And when we look at where Iowa companies and consumers are importing from, Canada and Mexico, again, are a big part of that trade, with China being the third highest import country. And then I guess you guys are importing some fine Italian wine and some other products from Germany. And in the Midwest, a lot of the imports are in transportation equipment, primarily motor vehicle parts. So I bought a Ford Ranger a couple months ago that was assembled in Detroit, but I believe a lot of the parts came from Mexico and Canada, and then were all assembled there. We see a lot of chemicals, a lot of computer and electronic products are coming from outside of the region. And oil and gas is not a manufacturing product, but that's a big part of the importation as well. When we look at the top imports for Iowa, again, that agriculture and machinery is one of the top pieces. And then a lot of other those fertilizers and chemicals. I imagine a lot of the basic chemicals are kind of those inputs for a lot of the fertilizer and ag chemical industry. And then when you look at imports, it's also for kind of consumer sales too. So I imagine that's some of the motor vehicle components as well. And we were able to kind of compare the size of imports based on the total demand from the manufacturing industry. And we found that in Iowa, 17% of the manufacturing demand was met through imports. The rest are coming from either within Iowa or other US states. And one of the things we noticed that's happening with trade, you saw that increase in importation in the Midwest. A big part of what we're noticing is this increase of related party trading. And we only have really good data on this at the national level, but you'll see that orange bar has increased over the past few years. And in 2023, 48 of all imports were related party trading, and that's between parent companies and subsidiaries. And so what you're finding is, if a German company creates a subsidiary in the US, but they've been making this one part for 100 years and they know how to do it well, they might just ship that one part to their subsidiary in the US, and that's an import. But the subsidiary in the US is employing people and growing. So they're kind of standing on the shoulders of those parent companies. And so we see that vice versa, as far as parent companies in the US also utilizing subsidiaries in other countries. And when you look at the types of industries that are really utilizing related party trade, transportation, equipment, chemicals, and machinery are some of the top industries. And so those are a lot of the top industries in the Midwest. So we think it's kind of this interplay between related party trade that's a big part of the discussion here. And so because of that, we wanted to look at the role of foreign direct investment in the Midwest. And we've noticed a trend. So the Bureau of Economic Analysis, they monitor the employment that is directly from majority-owned foreign-owned companies in the US, and they call that insourced employment. And instead of outsourcing, it's insourcing. And we've seen in the Midwest, the numbers grow from a little over 500,000, and then now or the latest data in 2022, to over 1 million jobs from these foreign-owned companies. The increase was the greatest during the Great Recession time, and then it's kind of leveled off a little bit in recent years. But the share of total jobs that are coming from these companies has increased steadily over the last couple of years. And in 2022, it was in the Midwest, it was 23% of all manufacturing jobs. And that's higher than the rates you're seeing in other places in the country. And when we look at the places where these companies are based out of, Japan is the highest. You have your Subaru plant in Indiana, and a lot of other European nations round out the other top companies that are investing and kind of creating manufacturing jobs in the Midwest. And we looked at this for Iowa too, and the trend is pretty strong as well in Iowa, with a kind of steady increase in this foreign direct investment. And this is a trend we're seeing not just in the Midwest, but kind of all over the country. The US consumer market has remained really strong. This is a place where manufacturers want to be, and we're noticing that kind of increase. And kind of those federal policies have also played a role in companies wanting to have a presence in the US. And when we look at kind of the top beneficiaries of this in the last couple of years, two of the states we studied in this report, Kentucky and Ohio, were in the top 5. The others were in the South. And then I'm going to kick it back to Ted. In this report, we just wanted to set the benchmark, but I want Ted to kind of just talk about, obviously the things that are going on have an impact, and, kind of dive into a little bit of what we're seeing currently.
Yeah. So without being political, tariffs have impacts. You can decide what you think those are. There's a fair amount of information that's been accumulated over the years on that. And there's no doubt that when a tariff is applied, the cost of it go different ways. The company picks up part of it. The country that is originating picks up part, and the consumer typically picks up part. The data suggests so far that companies have been planning for this. There's a lot of undecided policy on this. I think I was telling Nicole before the call started that there have been over 40 announcements, but relatively few things have been put in place. Just a couple, in fact, tariffs. And we backed up the timing on some of them. So companies currently have not passed along additional cost as much because there haven't been additional cost. You saw probably the biggest impact of the discussion of changing globalization happened in the GDP numbers for last quarter, which were negative for the first time in a long time. But they were negative because companies were front loading imports. They were getting as many parts and as many other things in as possible. And so part of GDP that counts against it is how much importing there is. And importing just surged dramatically. And so it's not real because it's sitting on someone's shelf at this point, and it will spread out over time. So companies are preparing for it. If I think the data from this morning, inflation numbers suggest that there will be some impacts in areas like furniture and toys and apparel that are very susceptible to this. But we don't actually know what's going to happen. We tell all of our clients until a deal struck somewhere, you don't know. And part of the administration, part of their strategy is non-economic. You've heard the president discuss improving drug seizures at the border or changing a way a country does something. Those are not about the economics of the situation. They're about broader geopolitical, geosecurity things. And so all of this won't be measured in the long term by what happens with a tariff. You can go to the next slide if you want, Skylar. The Federal Reserve Bank in Richmond, our local one for the part of the country I'm in, did a big survey of the businesses in this part of the South and asked, has your business done any of the following to prepare for tariffs? And 64% say have planned for price increases. They haven't done it yet, but the 47% and the 41% are the ones that are probably we're seeing the impacts of in America now, which is they froze. They didn't go forward with a planned expansion or something else, and they haven't gone forward with hiring plans because they don't know. In a time of insecurity, always companies wait. And if they find that individually they are likely to win, then they might be more aggressive. If they find they're likely to lose, they'll be less aggressive. But right now, until we get a clearer version of what's going on, I think the politics and the business of this are two completely different things. And so businesses will have to navigate this on their own. The ones that have deep pockets and broad margins on their products will be fine, and this will all spread out. Other ones might be impacted quite differently. And so watch, I guess the next big time is the beginning of August, and see what happens between now and then. I'm sure the administration is committed to trying to get as many deals done as possible over the course of this month. And anything that provides more certainty will free up some of those other numbers. Another slide. The other thing that we see is that services and manufacturing don't always look the same on this. Services. So the economy in America is 2/3 of our total economy is based on consumer spending. 2/3 of consumer spending is services, not manufacturing. And so, and as Skylar pointed out to you, a portion of what we make and what we consume is international in nature. And so part of our economy is shielded from all of this and won't be as affected. But how consumers feel, since how they spend money is 2/3 of the overall economy, how they feel is going to be the biggest overall impact as we go forward. So when I talk to groups, and Nicole mentioned I'm talking to one tomorrow, the very first question I ask is, are you going to spend more money or less money this month than you did this time last year? And if the answer is less, then I can predict the economy. And if the answer is more, I can predict the economy. And if the answer is I don't know, then nobody can predict anything. And that, unfortunately, is where we spend a little more time on these days. So, Skylar, is that the last one of those? Yeah. So, any final comments from you before I give one real wrap up? Okay. So, first, we just want to say thank you to Nicole and the Chamber. We love doing this kind of work. We're doing manufacturing work around the country, but we're also doing work on such fun topics as immigration for the Nebraska Chamber and technology for the North Carolina Chamber and tax policy for the New York Chamber and safety and sustainability for Florida. We are huge fans of state chambers. One of Nicole's compatriots around the country say that state chambers are the people that you help fund to watch the people you helped elect. And I think it's a great line. There has to be somebody who every day gets up and promotes business in America. And for the most part, that ends up being a state chamber at the legislative level. And so that's why we love state chambers and love the work. And we'll be happy to answer as many questions as we can and give you dumb looks if we don't know what the answer is.
Great. Thank you, Ted. Thank you, Skylar. Thank you so much for spending time with us this morning and afternoon and all the work that you do in partnership with the state chambers. And I've really enjoyed working with you on this project as well. And as Ted mentioned, the policy, I do just want to mention real quick, I didn't introduce our team that was with us today on the Zoom. And also think of questions. We've got Meg Schneider from ABI, Levi Lefebvre, and then JD Davis, who leads our policy work at the state capitol. So if you have any policy issues, be sure to reach out to JD. Does anyone have any questions? I did put the Iowa information in the chat. We'll also make sure you get a copy of that. But as you can tell, Ted and Skylar are just, they have all kinds of knowledge. They've seen all states and different things. They've really dove into the data. So would love to take any questions while we've got them for a few minutes from those that are online. Man, we got a quiet group this morning. There's always,
So Meg asked the question about FDI looking to slip, and I think the 23's data will be fine, but the early indications are for the last 6 months it is beginning to slip some, and I can't imagine that companies around the world are in any different position than our manufacturers here, which is they're waiting to see what happens. And so that's going to put a hold on some things. There's a lot of announcements bouncing around with foreign companies saying that they're planning to invest in America. That's great news. I don't want to belittle it. Some of them are announcements that were made a year ago and are being retold because it's in their interest to retell them. But saying you're going to invest and doing it are two things. I spent the first 30 years of my career as an economic developer and the last 10 running the Research Triangles stuff in North Carolina. We've found that over the years, something between 50 and 66% of every announcement actually happened. So talk is cheap. And so it is easy to, I think I had a mentor who said pandering with words is the cheapest thing you can do. So as the companies around the world say what they're going to do, as soon as they start buying land and building things, I'm in. Let's go. but they don't know what the rules are yet. So my guess is they're not going to pull the cord on anything to get started. So FDI and some of you probably were as frustrated as Skylar and I get that federal data lags terribly. I was dealing with someone on crime data this morning, and the latest crime data is still 2023. We have no idea what the final data is on 24 yet, and it makes everybody's head explode because you're trying to do real-time public policy, and it's hard when the data lags. So, sorry about that. As soon as it comes out, we'll let you know.
Yeah, I think that slip in those FDI numbers just tracks with kind of that increasing at a decreasing rate we've seen the last couple of years, particularly as interest rates went up as well. Um,
Yep, true. Good point.
Everything just kind of went flat after that.
Other questions? Well, there's a lot of information both in the full report that economic leadership put together for us, but also in the Iowa information. And this is something that we're really wanting to do and make sure that we're providing a resource to our members and all manufacturers and businesses in the state is also being at the front of those thought leaderships and these thought leadership and issues that are coming before you, not just right now, but 5, 10 years down the road. So as we mentioned at the beginning, we do have a couple of these upcoming webinars as well. We have one talking about expanding and changing marketplace. We're date to be determined on that in August. In September, we're going to talk about how employers are the employee's most trusted resource, more trusted than politicians for sure, the media, pretty much everyone. So I think whether it be the Edelman Trust or BIPAC, our partner in DC, we've just seen study after study of the resource and the opportunities that employers have to educate their employees. Although this isn't a big election year, there are a lot of local elections that happen in off election years. And as we're talking about property tax reform in Iowa, a lot of those decisions on what you see on your statement happen at the local level. They don't happen at the state level. And so making sure that you're engaged in how to engage and educate your employees is key. And so we'll be featuring our one in September will be on that. As you have topics of interest to you, to your companies, things that you're facing, we want to make sure, one, that you have a resource in us, but also that we can react to that and also think about that and work with companies like TED and others to really make sure you're getting what you need. So whether it be on thought leadership, manufacturing, whether it be in banking and finance, just encourage you to reach out to any of us on the team. Thank you for joining us this morning. Thank you, Ted and Skylar. Ted, I look forward to seeing you. I think we'll maybe even talking about this issue a little bit in Kansas City in a couple of weeks.
I look forward to that. I hope we get invited to come to Iowa sometime soon.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we love it. Thanks. See ya.
Thank you for having us.